Before we begin, as usual, I want to hold space for something that's pretty important, something often left unspoken. That's the shame that can arise when we realize that we may have seen signs of harm and we did nothing. This episode is not about blame, it's about awakening. So if your body begins to tense or your chest begins to tighten, pause if you need. Take a breath, come back when you can. There's no punishment here. I only want presence here. But let's go ahead and begin. The harm probably didn't start with violence. The harm most likely started with silence. And not the silence of one being hurt, but the silence of those who saw it happening, but looked away. And it's not because they were cruel, and it's not because they didn't care, but because looking closely would have required action. And action feels risky. So we instead scroll, we change the subject, we tell ourselves it's not my place. We say they probably have it under control, right? And we think someone else will step in, right? And that's all it takes. As a grooming movement, 764 does not just survive on manipulation, it thrives on hesitation. It counts on decent people not wanting to stir the pot, not wanting to make a false accusation, not wanting to get involved in something that seems really messy. But here's the truth. Silence is not neutral. Silence is permission. And permission does not have to be spoken out loud. Permission can be felt in the room, in the lack of the follow-up, in the nervous system, and the way that one laughs, in the absence of the questions, or in the just mind your own business kind of a culture that we're in. This is how grooming systems like 764 flourish in plain sight. Because no one chooses to empower them. They just choose not to disrupt them. And that right there is, I think, the most uncomfortable truth in this series so far. What we don't confront, we're in essence quietly endorsing. And I don't think we do this intentionally nor maliciously, but effectively. But if if the system isn't interrupted, it keeps on operating. If the language isn't challenged, it just keeps on spreading. And if the pain isn't named, it just keeps on echoing. See, 764 depends on that passivity, because the harm doesn't only happen in dark corners of the internet. No, the harm also happens at the dinner table, at the group hangouts, in side conversations that are happening, and in those edgy jokes that are sometimes told, in the comments that we let slide, in the content that we don't report, in the language that we excuse because they probably didn't mean it that way. And it always starts small, but small becomes strong whenever it's never checked. And when that happens, the one being harmed starts to believe that no one will step in, and no one will notice, and that no one will believe them, that no one will risk comfort to name the problem. And so they shrink, and they diminish, and they stay under, and they surrender, not because they were blind, but because no one else is looking with them. That's, I think, what we have to change. Not just the culture that grooms, but also the culture that lets the grooming happen unchallenged. And here's where integrity enters the room. Integrity says, I won't betray my values for the sake of comfort, or I won't pretend that I didn't notice. Or I won't choose peace over protection. And here's where intimacy even raises the bar higher. Intimacy says, if I care about you, I won't let you stay in harm, even if calling it out makes things awkward. I won't let my fear of being wrong be louder than your need to be safe. I won't ghost you when your pain gets inconvenient. That's what 764 cannot survive. It can't survive people who are courageous. Courageous enough to stay in the midst of that tension. People who will ask the question and do the follow-up and who speak up even when they don't have all the details. People who will name the harm even when no one else wants to. People who will disrupt the silence without needing any applause. Because silence doesn't just hide harm. Silence actually protects it. And if we want to dismantle the system, I think we have to disrupt the invisibility that makes this system possible in the first place. But let me just pause here a moment, because maybe this is hitting a little close to home for some of you who are listening. Perhaps you're thinking back to someone who you once knew who was struggling and you didn't ask, or you didn't push, or you didn't stay, or maybe you didn't say what was needed to be said. Maybe you were thinking, was I complicit in that? And here's what I want you to know. This is not about shame. This is about seeing, about being aware. And now that you see it, that matters far more than what you missed before. Because once you see it, it's really difficult to unsee it, isn't it? And once you name it, you get to become someone who notices earlier the next time. Someone who is willing to interrupt sooner. Someone who speaks even when their voice feels really shaky and uncertain. 764 got its name from one of the first digital nodes that we traced in a grooming community. A place where harm was distributed in broad daylight, but no one noticed it until it was too late. And that's, I think, why we want to reclaim that name now. That's why we want to speak now. That's why this movement is rooted in two things that I feel so strongly about. The first one is integrity, and the second one is an intimacy. Because you can't have real intimacy if your integrity only shows up when it's easy, right? And you can't have integrity if your intimacy disappears, especially when someone's feeling uncomfortable. See, I'm not here to be silent. We're not here to be silent witnesses. We are here to present protectors. And that doesn't mean that we're going to play the hero card. It doesn't mean that we speak over people. It means that we're paying attention. It means that we're asking better questions and we're doing the follow-up. It means that we call things what they actually are, and we take people seriously. Because the truth is, every time that we look away, there's someone else who learns that their pain does not matter. And we're not building that kind of a world. We want to build a world where pain gets witnessed and where manipulation gets interrupted and where silence does not mean consent, because silence is no longer an option. Listen, if this episode was stirring something within you, maybe some guilt or some regret or some resolve, join me tomorrow for our episode, because that episode that I've titled that episode naming the counterfeit, naming the counterfeit. But in that episode, we're going to talk about how false virtue, false strength, false love, false empathy, these can become disguises for control. And how clarity is probably one of the most radical tools that we have for freedom. But until then, don't turn away. Don't minimize what you're sensing. And don't underestimate the power of one person who refuses to stay silent. You're not too late. You are right on time. I'm so glad you listened to this episode. Join me tomorrow, won't you? Till then.